does the swearing?
I'll swear at a few.
Who does the swearing?
See this?
Good evening, Commissioners. Yes, I'm Bob Bamanick, the County Recorder, and I'm honored this evening, as I have been for quite a number of years, to spend the evening, at least part of it with you, and swear you in. And what's happened the last couple of years is the state auditors have shared a little information with us on wanting uniformity between counties. Seems not everyone swears in their Board of Equalization in the same manner. So tonight we're following that. And I'm going to be swearing in the board, which tonight is the 5 county commissioners and our county auditor, Chelsea. And I'll have each of you stand, and I'll have you raise your right hand. And before we start the oath, I want to say that the presenter tonight is John Conway, our county assessor, and he will have information on all property values in the county, and some of them are in groupings. So the way this starts is we'll have each one of you say "I" and your name, and we'll start with Dwayne and go around the room, and then we'll continue the oath.
I, Dwayne Begley.
I, Greg Olson.
I, Chris Meyer.
I'm Marcia Ward.
I, Josh Elsing.
I, Chelsea Wilbright.
All right, we'll follow the oath as I present it. Do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and I will perform the duties of the Winona County Board of Appeal and Equalization to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God. All right, we have a signature page for each line for each one of you, and we'll have you sign, and this will be notarized and will be an official record for the swearing in of the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Is separate than what we already did?
Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes.
We'll just have to go around, and if the names are not in the order of the seating, just sign next to your name.
Don't sign next to somebody else.
And once we have that, Madam Chair, it's back to you, and thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Never bring up in. Thank you.
Okay, the second order of business is to elect a chair for this board and a secretary. Are there any nominations for chair?
I'll nominate Chris Meyer.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other
You
nominations?
need to nominate a secretary at the same time.
We can do them separately, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, hearing no other nominations, would someone like to move to close the nominations?
Move to close.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor of closing nominations, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
If you're opposed, say nay. Okay, so Chris Meyer has been nominated for the board chair. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. I am the chair. Okay, so is there any nominations for secretary of this meeting? I
Oh.
think you don't have any duties. So
I will move to nominate Marcia Ward. I didn't ask Marcia, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
second
okay.
it.
That's okay. It's minimal.
Mhm.
Like an arm twist John Conway into Lauren.
I don't think that helps. So Marcia Ward has been nominated. Commissioner Vagley made that motion. I seconded that motion. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, would someone like to move to close nominations?
So move. Second.
Commissioner Elsing moves, Commissioner Olson seconds. All those in favor of closing nominations, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
If anyone's opposed, say nay. Nominations are closed. All those in favor of, if there's no further comments, all those in favor of Marcia Ward for secretary, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Commissioner Ward is the secretary. Third item is property owners' appeals. This would be a time when anyone in the audience could come forward.
Correct.
If I call 3 times.
I would.
Is there anyone in the audience who would, any owners, property owners in the audience that would like to make an appeal?
Anybody on?
Nope, just Heidi.
Two participants.
Is there anyone else online or in the room that would like to make an appeal? And for the final time, are there any property owners here who would like to make an appeal?
I'm sorry, just a question though, maybe Bob knows or John knows. What, was there any at the township levels or the cities themselves levels that appealed?
We had 11 total local board meetings. Only 2 people showed up, and they were both questions on their taxes. They had no question. One of them, his value went up a lot, and the house value went up a lot. And I asked him, well, can you get it for that? He goes, yeah, I can. So it was basically just about taxes, if anything. It wasn't even about valuation.
Okay, so minimal.
Very minimal. It was very quiet this year.
That's unfortunate. I mean,
And interesting.
why
Do
people
you
are
need a
so
motion to
complacent.
close that part, or are we just simply move on?
I think we just move on
Okay.
until someone shows up in the last.
I think Bob Amick had a comment.
Just wanted to add to that, I mentioned this at one of our other meetings, but it really is in play. We are the buy of the United States. We have people coming here from very large metropolitan areas where they can't sell their homes for what they paid for them in the last 3 years. Here they can buy a home and they'll have a significant reserve in addition. That will also impacts the market.
Since there were no appeals, there is no action for us to take for item number 4. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is to review the assessor's 2024 report. Mr. Conway.
All right. Well, let's just go down the bulletin points a little bit here. So we'll start with the tillable land. The 6 southwestern townships went up 5.5% roughly, and then the rest of the townships went up 12%. In the past, we're usually about 10% difference because the 6 townships in the southwest corner tends to be the best farmland. They historically tend to sell the best. We actually had a 14% difference between the other two, so I think I probably shouldn't have been that far. So I made it so they're a little bit closer, and also the rest of the townships that had to go up more on. That's where a lot of the sales was affecting the tillable market this past year. So now we're a little bit closer. If you look at the 2025 land sales here for next year, we're looking pretty good on that already. It's right now our ratio on tillable land alone is about a 98, close to 100 actually. So I think next year, knock on wood, unless there's some new sales that come in the next 3 months in the sale period, I'm not expecting too many crazy adjustments in tillable land.
But John, if
Yeah.
I can, I still don't understand why the best land only goes up 5.5 in the southwest, and the rest of us, land in my end of it's not prime tillable. It's little patches, it's little fields, it's rocky, it's rolling hills. It's a whole different lay of the land, and you're saying that part needs to go up 12% versus
This is the area that
5.5?
those are the areas that were affected the most, that was affecting the ratio. We were low on those areas. So there's definitely a market for it. And
So prior to this 12% increase, it was low relative to the other townships? Is that? do
yeah,
I get
we've
that
always
right?
had historically, we've always had at least a 10% difference between the 6 and the rest.
And the 6 were higher.
Yes, the 6 always have been higher.
So it's
And
a
it-
correction.
And it's still a little bit, it is still higher. There's about a 7% difference between the two.
So with the next bullet point though, then, so woods and wasteland, I would say my part of the county has more woods and wasteland than the south.
Yep.
West township. So woods and wasteland, is there a difference in that respect too?
No, woods and waste will have the same value at 4,700. So that went up $300 for the last year. For the next year, a lot of people are paying a lot of money to shoot a deer. We're now looking at about, right now, the next sales period for woods, we're looking at around 5,500 an acre that they're selling for. Between 5,000, I would say the range right now is 5,200 to 5,500.
Can you tell, is that out-of-state people or metro area people?
Typically half of it, yep, good question. Typically half of it is from out of the county.
So this is, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
No, I would,
Oh, so this is the property, the woods that had like the $1,000 an acre increase last year, right?
That was, I think, 2, 3 years ago. We were at 3,100 and it went to 4,000.
Okay,
Because it seemed like 4,100 at that time seemed to be the,
so it's increased again, but not
Yeah.
anywhere near as
not,
much.
not as much.
But you're saying that next year,
It's,
it could be like a big increase again.
it might be, it could, close to 10%, I would say 10 to,
Okay.
10 to 15% possibly. I wouldn't, hopefully not 30.
Yeah. Commissioner Olson?
No,
Oh,
nothing.
oh, you have-
Sorry,
Okay.
But that seemed,
Applies.
but I know,
I
like,
caught one of the corner of my head. I was like,
How do we, I want to look at a transfer of wealth out of the county. You want to look at, these land ownerships and how do we keep them that are locally own them,
Yeah.
that have a different source of funding. That, a lot of these landowners are agriculture people that are somebody's got to own it, right? So they're cost averaging that unproductive ground into their productive ground that we're taxing more and more and limiting and regulating and everything else. So if we look at a transfer of wealth out of the county for that, because these people really don't bring any value to the county other than maybe raising a little bit of tax. Was there a way around that?
actually, yes. So if you're a farmer and you're a homestead, you're a farmer in this county especially,
Yeah.
if you have a lot of woods you're not using it for agricultural purposes whatsoever, there is the Green Acres and Rural Preserve Program. And so that's where a lot of farmers in this county have saved a lot of money. So Rural Preserve I still value it so in this case, for next year, I still value it at 4,700. But they're actually being taxed at about 1,700.
Well, what I'm looking more for is that, we obviously have something unique. And there's an economic driver behind it that it's kind of like tourism in a sense. If somebody from out of state wants to pay that type of money and they're from out of state, do we have the ability to, I'm going to say, capitalize on that wealth sector coming in and ramping up the value of land for recreational purposes?
No. Short answer, no.
No, I don't think
They
you-
don't care. The
I don't think
tax
you can keep them from
system
buying it.
doesn't.
No, I'm not saying it's kind. I'm just saying if they're out of state, it's no different if I get a hunting permit over in Wisconsin, I'm going to pay a lot more as a non-resident than as a resident.
And John, so you mentioned Rural Preserve and what was the other one?
Green Acres.
Green Acres. But they keep going down, limited, and then our homestead credit keeps going down.
Actually, I'll get into the homestead credit in a sec, actually.
You sure I'm going
Okay.
with this though?
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But state guidelines, I don't think I'm going to be allowed to.
I have no idea.
But kind of what you're saying is like value the woodland for farmers differently than.
I'm saying for a local resident, regardless of whether they farm or not. If you live here, that's one thing. If you don't live here, you're from out of state or, some sort of jurisdiction that puts you as a non-local resident.
You pay more tax if you're not homestead.
I realize that. I'm saying superseding that. I'm saying looking at it more like if I were to go hunt in Wisconsin, I'm considered out of state. I'm not from here. I'm going to pay twice as much for that same permit as I would if I would lived in state. I'm just trying to think, I recognize why they're buying this land. They clearly have the operating capital to sit on a piece of property that does not generate any revenue, not a single dime. And this is purely recreational. So I look at it as tourism. The difference is it's one person that does not generate much, but has the ability to drive the land value up for everybody else that is trying to live off this land. And it's probably one of the most argumentative things I hear in agriculture when it comes to land use is that I'm paying for some rich guy to come here and buy a chunk of land that's very lucrative for somebody else that could care less, that just sells it off because they got rental property or rental land, and it's very advantageous for them to sell it off, but in turn, it hurts all of agriculture, and it hurts the land base, it hurts the land value. And the local guy that wants to buy the little 40 to put a house on, or he wants that for his kids, he can't afford to do it because he's in competition with XYZ rich guy from Chicago. Or some land, what we're seeing now is even land investment groups coming in, buying up these big conglomerates, buying up. I even know organic land purchased by land investors right here in Winona County is being rented back to organic farmers. And they're just these massive conglomerate people coming in and buying it through private equity. So I'm just I'm asking generating the conversation, is there a way that we can capitalize on these outside groups coming into our area, driving up land values with very minimal, I think, dramatic effects to the locals and a minimal amount of money generated by what they're doing?
I would totally agree with you.
This is kind of like the Cook County or that's what's that city, Grand Maris.
Right.
They have an Airbnb problem because outside companies been buying up all the housing there and making them to Airbnbs. And that has caused so much tax increase, that's frees everyone's house values that you can't really afford to live there anymore. Or it's very tough to live there.
There's not separate classifications for the Airbnbs beyond
Not
like
anymore.
non-homestead.
I would rather give the benefit to the local landowner, even at a logging basis or something that they can generate some sort of economic return on it. But when you start driving up woodland and wasteland, even the logging rights don't pay for just on the tax base, let alone a payment on something.
Is there any way to do that? I think we all agree with that. I strongly agree with that. But is there any way to do that?
Or something to look into, maybe.
Yes.
I could,
We need state legislators that
Yeah.
are willing to
States.
change.
Oh, but I'm just posing the question.
If there was a different classification, so that's the only way I would see that it would be.
I think the state's response is going to be, that's why you have green acres and rural preserve. Now, green acres, you don't save really any money on tillable land.
Right.
Pasture land, you save a little bit, but it's your woodland and rural preserve where you save a lot of money because instead of being taxed at, like I said, 4,700 an acre next year, you're taxed at, I think I put it at 1,750. So it's basically saying that to these woods to a farmer, it's not worth it. It's not worth a whole lot to them.
In rural, to get into rural preserve, they go to the,
You have to be home. Nope, you go to our office. You have the applications, you come. We try to encourage farmers if they're,
I'll be visiting you then.
There you go.
Never done rural
But
preserve. I
this-
could read
the
it.
only thing is though, if you ever were to sell it, you have to pay the taxes for the last 3 years of savings you have on it. That's really the only, but if you hold it on for many, many years,
Yeah.
then it's worth
Pretty
it.
minimal.
Not in the plan, yeah.
Well, years ago, it used to be these people were coming in and spending a lot of money, giving it to the landowners, and they were able to capture some of that, and they were staying overnight and going to hotels and restaurants and this and that, and that is, the dynamics of that are changing, and, you know, they're, through the ownership, it allows them a lot more freedom to just kind of pop in, pop out, pop in, pop out, and rather than having a set time to hunt and walk or do whatever they want to do. So
I don't
anyway.
want to place too much emphasis on a television series, but it's what we were talking about today about Yellowstone and Montana.
The concept.
Yeah, it's the same
Foreign-
gentrification of ag land where you price to locals out of your own. Company.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So, and I guess if they want to pay for it and it means that much to them, then great. But it's like anything else, you got to pay to play. So I guess that'd be the way I would try to keep it. Okay, moving on.
Pasture land for the first time ever, we've always in the past had pasture land, waste and woods at the same value. I've seen the last couple of years where pasture land's not selling as well. They're still selling okay, but I didn't think that should be in the same boat anymore with woods and waste. So I did raise like $100, but it's like I said, it's the first time I ever had to separate the two, and I think I finally have some data to show me that I can do that.
So that is a separate category?
Yes, yes, correct.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna skip the bullets point. I'm gonna go back to the time trend that we, Commissioner Meyer, you brought up earlier. So the time trend is set by the Department of Revenue. And when it comes to ag and rural vacant land, they call it is the regional time trend. So we're in the mix with Fillmore County, Olmsted, Houston, Wabasha, and Goodhue. And so they gave us a 12.9% time trend, and all time trends can be appealed. Ag, I've noticed in the past, ag and rural vacant land is very tough to win the appeal, but we worked with Olmsted County on this one. We all agreed that we should not be getting a time trend at all. So
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term, time trend?
correct. So
What's that mean?
So like, if you ever get an appraisal on your house, you probably would see that on like your statement there. If a property sells today, it's typically going to be worth more in the future because the market typically always goes up, and sometimes it goes the other way. But lately, in these last couple of years, prices have gone up for housing, especially. So, so they look at, it's whatever Department of Revenue's their formula. So if something sells, let's just say a piece of farmland sells for $300,000 in January, and they give me a time trend. Now they're saying that $300,000 sale price is actually now, we'll say 350,000 instead. So it's whatever their formula they use, their own way of doing it, but it's always appealable, and it can always be appealed, and we appealed it, and we actually got a 0% time trend after showing them the facts, which I was pleasantly surprised that they gave us that.
So ours now is different, our time trend is different than those other counties around us because we appealed, but they didn't?
Everyone around us appealed except for Fillmore County.
Okay, so it changed for everybody but Fillmore?
Correct.
Okay, and then this is affecting the estimated market value
Yes,
that you
it's how
assigned?
much, I knew I had to go up no matter what.
Yeah,
All it did was it made sure I didn't have to go up as much.
okay,
Because I do promise, they do it, the DOR will ask me, are you gonna, like, what is your plan then? Like, you're just gonna go up very barely and just barely we call it get over the goalpost? And I said, no, I'll be going up a fair amount still. But in this case, it was not as much. So, so next then we go to housing. For the most part, housing was a little bit difficult to predict. Because interest rates have absolutely, I think, played a little bit of a factor of keeping the prices, at least nothing crazy like it was like 2-3 years ago where, and Bob, you remember this, everything was selling crazy. So this time around, the base rate only went up $4 from 158 to 162. We did have a time adjustment for Winona, Goodview, Wilson, Homer, and Rolling Stone, and 5.1, and the rest of the county was 5.4. In the last like 2 years, it's been like close to 10%. So having a 5% is not too bad. Housing, new houses, that's gone down. 22, we had 62 new houses being built. This year, we only had 39.
and you see that trend changing for this year?
So far, I think if I would, it's going to probably be close to around the 40 range.
Okay.
That's at the moment.
That's a less than 0.5% increase.
That's countywide, new house construction.
Yes, 39, yes.
Heck, I got 2 on 4 Farms Road, so I'm contributing. I mean,
Yeah.
there's 2 in that one little,
Well, I'm just saying.
and there's,
Six farms were.
and no, we can't change the name. That's part of the ideology. But there's been a number of new rural residents built.
Well, we'll see next year if he's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is, like Commissioner Olson said, it's countywide. It's not just.
Even St. Charles grows, there's not near the building going.
I think St. Charles probably had the most, tax
Yeah.
district wise, probably had the most houses.
But from even a couple of years ago, just, the lower addition, the upper addition, and there's actually not as,
Yeah.
there's not the lots that there used to be sitting open. So the lots are dwindling down to nothing. And until Pearson opens up that lower part, there's supposedly roughly 61 houses that can go in by John Deere there.
Is that off by Sweetwater, I think?
Yeah, well, Pine Ridge, whatever that is
Sure.
by,
Yep.
yeah. I think that's the next scheduled one to go in.
Okay.
So,
Didn't our local housing study say that in the city of Winona, there were 73 buildable lots that are vacant?
I don't remember the number, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was more than I thought.
73, huh? Okay. A lot of that might be in Mike Rivers replatted area,
Or up in Devon Heights.
and there's some in Government Heights. I know there's still a couple more up there. As for the sales for last year, on the next page, so countywide, sales were down a lot. We had 446, and we call them qualified sales. So qualified meaning it was open transaction. It was not a relative. It was like no estate sales. It was just buyers trying to get the best deal he can. The sellers trying to get the best deal they can. So, so before then, so my ratio has to be between 90 and 105. So countywide, we're at 90.37. I ended up going to 94.5 countywide. And if I have 6 sales or more in a taxing district, I have to use those 6 sales at least to determine the market and make sure, once again, the median ratio is over 90. If I'm not over 90, Department of Revenue will make me raise the values 5% increments until I reach that median ratio hits 90. And So you definitely don't want to be told that by DOR, and thankfully this year they called state board increases, and I just got confirmed that there was no state board increases this year.
So when they do that, it's 5% max
5% increments
increments.
until your median
But a
ratio
year.
hits.
Year? Yeah.
Yes.
Per year?
So let's just say,
Wisconsin must not have that.
Yeah.
I don't think they do.
We gotta
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
call Tony and let him know the system.
So you need to be between 90 and 105%.
The median ratio, yes.
Right.
So if you look at, so Goodview City, I was at 86.51. So let's just say I messed up and I did not get over 90. So I would have to make sure I raise everything 5%. And if that median ratio is still under 90, then I got to raise it another 5%. And the worst,
So, but it takes you 2 years to.
no, I have to keep raising it. No, it's a single
Oh.
year.
There we go. All right. Just sit her down.
You're running,
Thank
I'll,
you.
I'll give you this pot.
Thank you.
So, like I said, this year was much more quiet, just Goodview City. And I try to find, and so City of Altura and Homer, and I try to find out, even though there's not a lot of sales, I try to find out what's the one factor that's why I'm low. So like City of Utica City, I noticed that the 3 older homes, we were low on. The 3 newer homes, we were closer to the assessed value. So I raised the lower homes more than the newer homes. So that's kind of that's some factors I try to play. And I know Homer, there was just no rhyme or reason. It didn't matter what age it was or anything like that. In Goodview City, that was more of the one, and Bob will know this, houses between like 150 and 300,000. Those are the ones that were just selling really well because there's not a whole lot in the market, and some people were paid anything they can to get it.
Yeah.
And so those were the areas I was wrong. So I was low on. So the houses between them, I raised them more than the rest. So I try to find the reasons why. Commercial properties, there was a typo on there. It says 24 sales. Last year was actually only 13 sales countywide. 7 were in Winona. 6 were in the rest of the county. So I had a low ratio of 82, and then I got to 91. Commercial sales can be really difficult to figure out because everything is so different. You have a service garage, you have a strip mall, you have an office building. Everything is so different on these things. So I try to, and really the main thing on, at least in the city of Winona, I had 3 strip mall sales, and 2 of the 3 I was low on. So I kind of figured out like, okay, I should at least go up on strip malls. And then you have the egg and rural vacant land. So the ratios were in the egg was 86, and then rural vacant land in 88. So after that, we're at a 95. And like I said, I think next year, if you look at the 2025 sheet, at least for egg land, I think we're pretty good there at the moment. Just woodland might have to go up a little bit. And then Marcia, just to Commissioner Ward, I mean,
Yeah, that's okay.
so like you mentioned the egg credit. So this is some legislature changes that have been going on.
Yeah.
So there's 2 main things. First off, for egg, the tier limit where your first it was like around 2.3 million, where the first of your egg land that your homestead on goes at the 0.5% class rate. And then after that, it goes to 1%. So you might have a parcel where your taxes actually double. It's because of the class, because your egg credit was over, and now you're at the 1% rate. The legislature passed a law that starting in 2025, yet the 2.3 goes to 3.5 million. Huge increase, very huge
Yeah,
increase.
that's big.
So let's say, for example, you have 3 million in egg land this year. At least 700,000 of it, you're paying at the 1% class rate. Now, let's say now you see for 2025, your land went up, let's say 12%. Well, 3 million into 12%, that's not 3.5 million. So your whole entire property would be at that 0.5% class rate. So big savings on that.
Okay, all right.
Same thing with housing too.
I'm not in that category.
I know you're not. But for houses, they finally adjusted the homestead exclusion. That has not been adjusted since I've been here since 2008. So it was, if your house is at 76,000, that was at the time, that was your maximum exclusion you can get. Well, 76,000 for a house now, that's nothing. So the maximum now is 90. So the maximum exclusion is 96,000. And then your homestead credit ends, or exclusion ends when it hits 517,000. That's for taxes 2025 as well.
And right now, for 24, it's at 413, I think,
Okay.
is where it phases out. So that's gonna jump up to 517.
517.
So
And I'm not in
100,000.
that category either.
Yo,
Oh, but there's a lot of houses that's gonna make a big difference.
Yeah?
Yep. I think I don't want to predict, but there might be a shift at least for housing, and hopefully taxes kind of stay flat with the exclusion this year at the very least.
sure.
And then like I said, I think farmers, especially if you have your homestead, I think that's going to be a huge benefit as well this year as well, for next year as well. So those are really the big legislature changes.
Mr. Bamanek.
Yes.
Wanted to add to that, for the last 2 years, Winona County was supporting that exclusion increase, and we were very successful. One of the reasons was because Representative Polonsky was very successful in moving some of our proposed legislation forward. And could I make one other comment about Commissioner Olson about woodland sales? During the late 1980s, I hadn't been recorder very long, but I got briefed by several farm groups on the very difficult times that were being faced and foreclosures that were taking place. And on my own, I came up with one suggestion that I thought would very temporarily help them. And that was to sell a very small acreage of farm that they could look at and not think that they were selling the heartland of the farm. In other words, if there's a little wooded area kind of on the far side, sell it, you're going to be able to make a payment and you're going to put your mortgage foreclosure off probably a year. The farm groups, they just no, they did not want to do that. And it kind of stayed that way. And we had several of them that, in fact, we had 22 that lost their farms. And some of them farmers, they were never the same. But we hadn't been through it before. And it wasn't tried and true. Nobody knew for sure. But the reason I'm telling you about it is because in the last 3 years, we've seen a change. It's probably the generational change from dad, grandpa to son. And we've had several farms that I think earlier would have been committed to not selling any part of the farm, now selling the woodland. We've just had 3 or 4. John and I just talked about one that just came in that we were rather surprised about. So there are changes taking place. And in a couple of these cases, excuse me, thank you. In a couple of these instances, it wasn't immediate that there was going to be a home, but I think if we look at it a little more closely and look at relationships, that probably is in the offing. So we are seeing some changes. And those sales, they've been long sought after, but it was kind of a sacred thing. You just did not sell off part of the farm. We've seen that change in the last 3 years.
Generational.
So,
It's a generational thing,
So-
and you see that. And I think when they want to sell them off, we need to figure out how to capitalize on that from out of state people coming in. And it's tourism in essence, so.
Commissioner Olson.
so the problem that Commissioner Elsing pointed out was your fault, Bob. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together.
So, John, can you remind me, the farm you said, so the numbers on farms changes from what, 3.5 up to,
It was 2.3 million, now it's 3.5 for
Okay.
for 2025.
okay, and homes is,
The exclusion, the maximum is 96,000, and then
96.
like that's when you get the maximum amount of exclusion.
Uh-huh.
And then 517,000 is when it phases out.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, Bob, because I remember a number of years ago when I still lived in Altura, and I won't say where, but we were pretty desperate to build in the country. And we're within the city limits of Altura, because there's the city limits of Altura is very large. And so we talked to, and, knowing every one of the farmers and landowners and even outside of the city of Altura and other locations. And, it was interesting, just for fun, what I would offer for a small parcel of land. And it was borderline wasteland. And, it really wouldn't have made a difference on the farm. And we're very little. And the amount of money that I was willing to offer, just because I knew what it would take to get that piece of land, they wouldn't cash flow that for 100 years, let alone, if they would have put that money, they could have put all their grandkids, eventually through school or something. So you're right. There is a generational thing that they just didn't want to let go. And because it is very hard to get back, and I know farmers that live by, we don't sell land, we buy land, and that's what they do, and that's okay. It's their right. That's what makes this country great. But so I've experienced that firsthand. So that's how we ended up in St. Charles, to be honest.
It's unique in Winona County. The number of acres within the corporate limits of Altura County.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Don't remember. I think it's close. Is it the second or third largest, actually, geographic city?
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you ever look at Altura, it's big.
It is. It's very significant in size, and someday that is going to be looked at, and it will be very significant. 2 years ago, I had a very interesting tour of 3 different locations when we were looking at what was happening with housing, and one of them was Albert Lea. Albert Lea is much like the city of Altura. Their corporate limits just expand and expand and expand. It's unbelievable, the acreage within that community. They have 13 lakes that are somewhat similar to Lake Winona within the corporate limits, and there's homes built along the shores of several of those, more that haven't even been touched. And just with that very brief overview, can you imagine the future value of land?
Oh, yeah, without a
in-
doubt.
Yes,
Altura's got to be thousands of acres.
yeah, it is.
It's big.
So the point being that after you have that tour, and then you tour in Wisconsin, Holman, and you come back to the drawing board in Winona, where we're maxed out to the corporate limits and we're looking for little pieces, the world doesn't seem like it's equal for everyone.
Sure. Okay.
Thanks.
Got to build up.
Can we move
Anyway.
on, folks?
Just one quick thing, one thing in my office that we did in our office. So this is the slip from DOR. This is over the Minnesota property tax refund. So definitely, if we knew someone was going to qualify for it, we made sure that that didn't like how much their taxes went up.
We're pushing those.
We're pushing these out to let them know. Like, especially a lot of people probably get you could do it online, or your tax consultant could probably be able to do this. So that's something that we absolutely pressed on, that heavily recommended, because you could be Bill Gates, you could actually still, on certain circumstances, qualify for this.
Can I beat that dead horse a little bit? There's 2 different types of property tax returns, and a lot of folks don't apply for the property tax return because they think it's income based and they don't qualify. But there's 2 different types. If your property taxes went up over $100 or 12% year over year, whichever's greater, you're going to qualify regardless of income for a portion of that back. So
And
that
it's
special
only
property
on
tax.
homestead.
Correct.
Correct. Yep.
But the
If it goes
filing
up-
date's pretty long. I
What's that?
mean, when I
Yeah.
looked at it,
You file,
could,
you
like,
can
go 2
file
years
until August, they're
I'm
due
like
August
84
15th,
now.
but I've got plenty of those flyers too, if anybody wants to take a few, but it's due August 15th each year, but you can go back a couple of years, and people won't get the funds until like end of August, September. But for all the folks, especially in your area, Marcia, where they went up significantly,
Okay.
like that supervisor that was here, I calculated just on that one farm that's homesteaded, and he'd be getting back like $700, regardless of income, just with the special property tax return. So if they went up over $100 or 12%, it's worth filing.
honestly, I was going to, at one point, sort of write a little article for the Winona Post where I did mine to see if I would qualify, but to try and show folks how easy it is
Yeah.
to do.
$100, that's a very low threshold.
$100 or 12% of your that line one, if it went up over $100 or 12%, whichever is greater.
Just your county, so that line one would be your county
Nope,
taxes?
line one is the general.
General assessment.
Yep, it
Everything.
excludes market value and assessments, that's all.
Okay, so, but it doesn't include like school taxes and things?
It does.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's the
It
full
does.
tax burden, yeah.
Okay.
Your tax, yeah, the line one just excludes, like special assessments. If you didn't pay your water bill, you don't get a portion of that back.
Okay, but it does include like city,
Yep.
township and county?
Yep.
Okay, okay, line one, I'm trying to think what line.
It's,
one is.
yeah, it's the top line of your property tax.
Okay.
Taking my hand with a flyer.
I need that back.
I've got a bunch of them at my
One, two, yeah.
I put them out in the front, out there. We put them over here where they're paying taxes.
Thank you.
Hey, don't have a computer, you can call. Somebody realizes.
We have the paper forms at my office. Like we're required to be able to have those on hand for folks, so if they'd rather have the paper
Hand them
form,
out.
we can give them
Yeah,
that
that's
too.
yours. I'm sorry, I just borrowed it.
Okay,
Just one quick thing then, for the next sales period, this sheet I made for you all, just to give you an idea what's going on for the next assessment. So I think one telling thing is, I know obviously Dresbach and Richmond took a pounding the year before. But if you look right there, they have about 7 sales in each of their districts and their ratio is pretty good at the moment. So even with the higher increases I had to do, that was mandatory I had to do, now things are selling pretty good there. So hopefully it's, I don't like to increase things that much. But so far it looks like things are holding their own. Just Wilson looks like we're just slightly low on. City of Winona, it's selling really well at the moment. A lot of good sales on there. The only thing I'm just really concerned on is the commercials. Commercials is just selling really well. And not everything has been qualified yet. I still got to do some sales verifications with chance that there might be some personal property involved that I could throw the sale out. But at the moment, commercials that might be my problem I have to deal with for the next assessment.
Go easy.
I'll do my best. I tell everybody I do my best.
But that's got to be in certain areas. I mean, if I had a commercial,
Sure.
I know a building, actually, a friend of mine, but he's a constituent, but he called me this morning. We've been talking for it. Bought a little building in Lewiston and 63,000. So it's public knowledge. If you took that exact same building and moved it here, or moved it to Rochester, or you moved it to maybe even St. Charles, that would be 3 to 5 times that. If I took the same building and moved it to Altura, it would be the same, right? Possibly less. So you need to be very, very careful because it's that sector. I'm in that sector. I own multiple commercial properties. And it is so site specific. It is not a house. Nobody's coming there because, hey, that's a good deal because I can buy a house in Altura cheaper than Winona and pay less taxes. It is such a site specific thing.
And last year it was, because last year, City of Winona, for example, they only had 7 commercial sales. 3 of them, 2 sales were at those service garages, but one we were right on the money. The other one we were low on, so they didn't really tell me a whole lot. But then they had 3 strip mall sales where 2 of them I was definitely low on, and that kind of showed me, all right, I believe the one that we were on the money on, it wasn't the best location. So I definitely try to pinpoint where I should have increased and where I
So
should.
it's a location inside of a location.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the number one rule in commercial real estate.
so when you do the ratio, do you do it for commercial within each municipality or commercially countywide?
Both. So City of Winona will always get at least 6 sales. So I have to deal with City of Winona by itself. Usually it's very rare when another taxing district in this county gets 6 sales. But the state still looks at it as countywide.
Comps, yeah.
Not always, because they could enforce a state board increase if your county-wide is under 90.
Yeah.
They rarely do that, but they could.
So you are forced to raise it till at least 90.
The first year I did, and then this was under Mr. Hacken at the time, he was trying to give me advice. He says, no, you don't have to be over 90 under the countywide. Well, then my DOR rep, he didn't really like that.
And that was not true.
But he said, like, I'm not going to give you a state increase, but I wouldn't do that again.
A number of years back, they gave commercial properties $100,000.
Yep.
I never really saw it because it just got absorbed into everything else. Is there any talk of them doing that again?
So the state tax, it was like they got rid of the state tax for, I think, for the first 100,000.
Yep.
As far as I know, I haven't heard anything else since.
Increasing that or whatever.
It would, I'm not the only county that might have to go up a lot in commercials. And so you think eventually this might hit the legislature, just like houses, just like the farms. Eventually, they might be relooking at commercials. I know my colleague in Goodhue County, they had to go up about 30% in commercials countywide.
But I mean, so you're saying 30% on a commercial building in Lewiston is the same as 30% on a commercial
No,
building?
no. It wouldn't, I'm not saying it would go up that much. It would, I tried to pinpoint where I need to go at.
Because I mean, some of these are to the point where they're just maxed out. I mean, there's nothing left. Otherwise, they just don't cash flow.
And sometimes I'll look at, I see that these $2 million properties here are not selling very well, but these $100,000 properties are selling really well. So sometimes that's how I'll look at things as well.
Yeah,
It's-
commercials, it's just so
weird.
difficult to try to lump it into something.
Yep.
Because it just doesn't work the same.
Tax court. It's been fairly quiet this past year. So we settled with Dahl. We didn't give up a whole lot. That one, like I said, I think in the email I sent you all, that could have been a very expensive case. Thankfully, it wasn't. So Bluffview Partners, that's that 55 and older next door to Winter National Bank. They dismissed for pay 23. They still have for pay 24. And at the moment, I think my valuation is correct. So I think we're gonna do what we can do on that one, unless they show me some evidence why they think I'm wrong. And then the new one is the Fastenal building just right here. That's suing us. So it's the most expensive property in Winona County. So I am giving some outside help on that, but also too, next week, Tuesday, I'll have it on the consent agenda to hire an appraiser.
Okay.
So that's what that's all about. He's a good appraiser.
How much difference are we at? I mean,
We're, I don't know what they haven't sent us an offer yet, but we have about 21 million on that.
okay, and they're,
We know what it costs to build it.
Sometimes the permits, I'm not sure how accurate those are, but that's why you have an experienced appraiser that does with this on a daily basis to hopefully give you an idea what the cost approach would be on this. But I think we're about $208 a square foot on an office building. That's actually for office building, that's not that much. But it's also 100,000 square feet too. So the problem is there's no other building like this in this area whatsoever. You know, I'll find this probably in St. Cloud, Mankato, definitely Rochester, but here, yeah.
No.
So it's a difficult property, but I'll see what my appraiser thinks and go from there.
we don't know what they think it's worth.
Not yet. No, that's what for next Tuesday, hire him and then he'll get back to me. It goes in two phases. He gives me a verbal, what he thinks it is. And then if we need to go to court or get ready to go to court, then he'll make a full-blown appraisal.
So with that said, the building that the arts music thing, are we keeping tabs on that?
That is tax exempt.
Oh,
It's going
that's
to be a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Wow.
I got some advice from some colleagues and they said, I do, that they qualify for it, and they do. So they're tax exempt
Why do they call, I mean, I'm thinking.
because they're a
They're a
nonprofit.
nonprofit.
But however, the land across the street from it that's being bought up, that's still taxable.
And the next block.
And the next block, yes.
Music is nonprofit.
The
Isn't
two
it a
blocks
music hall or something?
that are over on
What
the
are
other
they
side of the
gonna do
bridge
with
It
over
is,
here,
but
that's
he
being,
formed
that's
a
taxable.
nonprofit
Profit to
to,
build it.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's really nice of these very well-to-do people. They know how to do it. They hire the lawyers to. Yeah. That's what you need to do, Josh. You just need to become a nonprofit. Somehow hide behind it.
Like already nonprofit.
And then I just got one last thing. I do have, I'm kind of done for now. Do you have any questions on my report or?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific.
And then,
So the next order of business is to act on the assessor's consent change list. Do you have one?
I just have one.
Okay.
This is Wayne Getz at 633 East 4th Street. He's on the city board for St. Charles. We were kind of going through his, he had some questions on his valuation and we looked at something and he didn't think something was right. We had like a basement finish on it and he said it's not really finished at all. So Lindsay, the board had a vote, no change. And so Lindsay in my office walked through it with him. And yeah, there was not really any basement finish.
Is this in St. Charles or in Woodall?
St. Charles.
It is in St. Charles, okay.
About a half a block from me.
Man, good guy.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah. So we were at 374,000 even. We lowered it to 367,300. So a $6,700 decrease.
Need a motion for that?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we're going to give it to Mr. Elsing, Commissioner Elsing. Okay, so Commissioner Olson moves, Commissioner Elsing seconds of approval of your recommendation. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. If anyone is opposed, please say no. Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Elsing, second by Commissioner Vagley. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. If anyone opposed, please say nay. We are adjourned.
And please, if anyone's got any questions, you have any
Thanks,
text,
guys.
Thank you, Bob.
have any questions, please have them give us our office a call. We'll talk.
If you were at 105%.